Hi, this is Holly with HPLoveCoach.
And I'm Ben with the Galahad Project.
And today we are going to tag team talking about conversations and how to make them not boring and more interesting.
Definitely. It's a big issue that I see with people when they're dating is that guys and girls go through the typical, where are you from? What do you do? And it just gets stale and really boring quickly. So today we're going to talk a little bit about some ways that you can unboring your conversation and make things a little bit more interesting. So what do you think? What are some struggles you see and fixes?
The two biggest things that I see when people are dating is suddenly everyone has an opinion and everyone is an expert on something that they just tried once. So if you tell me, I write for a magazine and I'm like, oh yeah, I totally did that once and here's my experience and I'm totally going to override your version of the conversation because I just want to talk about me. That sucks.
Totally, becoming
Nobody
the me
likes
monster.
That. Yeah, absolutely. It's you want to relate and you're excited to share, but sometimes you're too excited and you share too much.
Great.
That's probably the biggest thing. Or people being critical of the person that they're on a date with, their opinions.
Oh, attacking the other person?
Yeah, kind of I'm really into knitting. Oh, knitting's for old people, okay? And it's really not good for you, and
Sure, yeah.
Okay, well, I'm not going on another date with you because this sucks.
Totally. Another thing I think that happens a lot is people are so worried about this is, I guess, on the opposite side of the spectrum from that. People are so worried about offending the other person that they keep all their topics really neutral and don't really express a lot of character. But when you're dating someone and you're trying to create chemistry or create a relationship, it doesn't work to stay on the safe topics. So you really want to make sure that you're, get talking about what's interesting to you, and also maybe the biggest thing is actually talking about what the other person is interested in, so
that's definitely bigger.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So if Holly's interested in knitting, I don't know that much about knitting, so I might ask her, well, not only the quote unquote boring questions about knitting that would get us started, well, how did you get started knitting? What was, so she might answer that. But I also, I'm curious. I don't know what knitting is. I don't know the difference between, knitting and crocheting, for instance. So I might ask her what the difference is, because I heard that the bear in downtown Denver got crochet bombed, and I don't know the difference, really.
There's a big difference, but that's a topic for another video.
Totally. But what I mean to say is, so that's... I call this concept finding the other person's buying the other person's chairs, which is just a reference to a movie. But the idea is whatever she's interested in. If I know that she's passionate about it, and you can ask a question hey, what excites you the most in your life, or hey,
that's a great question because people don't usually ask that.
Exactly. And then you find out something that actually is going to get the other person inspired to talk about. And then you get to put on your your best listening ears and kind of figure out pretend that you were a mystery novel character, and you wanted to unravel what it is that's so interesting to the person about that, and what it is that thing is, because you probably have a completely different concept. I totally knitting, for instance. I have no I know it involves needles and yarn, but I don't really understand. But she's probably got really good reasons why she loves to do it. So just expressing that interest in the other person, I think, is really important.
Yeah, and on the same vein as not wanting to offend anybody by sticking with safe topics, allow yourself to geek out over what you're going to geek out over. If somebody's going to ask me about knitting on a date and I get a little bit all right, well, I could give him the 2-minute response or the 2-hour response. Geek out over it. Geek that shit out. Love it. Show how much you love it. And don't worry if you come off as a dork, because the right person is going to find that super attractive.
Totally. The other part about that that's good to note is the longer that your responses are, and also be open to other people interrupting you if things happen. And again, keep in mind, if you're doing the interrupting, don't talk over people. Don't abuse whatever their ideas are. Make sure that you're not turning it into all about you if it's something that they're interested in. But at the same time, if she's talking about knitting and all of a sudden it reminds me of the fact that my great grandmother, who I was very close with,
stereotypical about it. Way to bring the grandmas in here.
Well, that happened. But I loved my grandma. She didn't knit though, but she did needlepoint when she. I don't know if it's called needlepoint. I don't know what any of these things are called, but she would make these amazing quilts. Stitching,
so she was
whatever.
quilting?
Anyway, yeah, she would make she would make these amazing quilts, and you know, I was really close to my grandmother, and so that like is another thing like where it lets us connect maybe on an emotional level, which is again what I think the point of the conversation is in the whole like in general is that we're trying to make a connection on some emotional level. So you know, whatever excuses you have to do that to where you can actually like get to those emotional topics, that's really what all the other conversation's about. So to get back to my original point, if she's geeking out on knitting for the 2-hour response or whatever, like that's the more she talks about what she loves, the more conversational threads that I have access to that I can like say, oh, cool, you know, and that, oh, here's another interesting thing about what you just said, or, you know, like whatever, like keeping it relevant. So I think that's an interesting thing too.
Yeah, absolutely. And a lot of conversation is all about listening and then using what you hear to formulate your own response. That is a topic for another video, and we will follow up with that one.
Totally.
However, I think this is a good start. So to recap, how to unboring your conversation.
Don't be a me monster.
Don't be a me monster. Don't be critical. And find the geek. Love the geek.
And build the emotional connections.
So also that.
Totally.
All right. Well, it's been great talking with you guys, and we will be back soon with more stuff.
Enjoy your conversations.